All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Mr. James Lady tonight. He is from the great state of Michigan, and he is a student of things Bigfoot related. He likes getting out in the woods and just figuring things out. Well, how's it going tonight, James?
It's going well. Thank you, Jeremiah. It's a pleasure to meet you, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you and your growing audience. I've watched your channel grow over the past months, and it's quite impressive. So I consider this my privilege. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been a fun journey and a weird one, but man, the stories and things I'm able to get out are very cool, and that's why I put the hard work in. But let's start out with this, James. So, what part of Michigan are you from, or that you're comfortable sharing with? Maybe for a little context for the listeners.
I live in a town called Grosse Pointe. We're at the mouth of the Detroit River. It's a great fishery, which is great for me because I love to fish any time through the ice or with a teeny size 22 fly. I don't know, but I just love fishing, the full spectrum of fishing. So I live in Michigan, which is surrounded by water and all sorts of life. I live in Grosse Pointe, which is just east of Detroit. A lot of brick and mortar around us, and it kind of drives me crazy sometimes. So I have to go to the woods sometimes and exercise my boyhood dreams of adventure, and that's exactly what I'm doing these days. And I never really saw it coming. This whole Bigfoot journey has been very organic. I was naturally curious as a boy and thought if they did exist, I want to see one. And I was going up north anyway to fish in a valley on the same parallel where my father took us up to camp, and up to a cabin vacation every year for a couple of weeks. So anyway, I fell in love with the area. Eventually moved up here from Southern Ohio, and learned that just by planning a simple trip to the Boundary Waters, a camp and fishing canoeing trip, I eventually clicked on a little Bigfoot video, and I went down the rabbit hole, and just by my own wits and reckoning, by simply what I learned on YouTube, this phenomenon is really quite real. And it's amazing what the madness you have to sift through, not only through your own head, but all the junk out there that's out there. There is a lot of junk, but I think that there's an ever-growing body of people out there curious, just like myself, who are putting their evidence out there. And I wish to somehow contribute to the recognition of this reality that we find in the woods. And I never thought it possible, but when I did find out the phenomenon is real, I just wanted to see one. And I took it to the nth degree, like I have with some other obsessions in my life. And here I am. I'm with the Michigan Aboriginal Project, and I'm just putting I'm sharing my journey and sharing what evidence that I have collected on my own in the woods of northern and southern Michigan, all throughout the state.
When you say northern Michigan, are you talking about the Upper Peninsula or the actual northern part of the?
Both. I spend most of my time in the northern lower, but my daughter was going to northern Michigan for a few years, and I got to know the UP a little better. I've been ice fishing up there for some years, and I've had some experience up there. And some of the recordings I've sent you, I think 2 of those that I have sent you are from the UP. And but this is a hobby. It doesn't even have to be Michigan. You don't have to limit yourself to a particular state, or have to isolate yourself to the Northwest to expose yourself to the reality of this phenomenon. You can be anywhere. I believe in any watershed on any continent, you have populations of these beings.
I agree 100% with you. From the people that I've talked to over the years, there is interactions all over the place in places that you would not think they're totally happening. Was there a situation that happened that really transitioned the way you looked at the Bigfoot creature and that made you say, like, okay, from here on out, I'm getting into the woods, I'm figuring this out, and made you take it very seriously?
I don't know if there's any specific time that happened, but when I found out that they were a real phenomenon, like I said, I just wanted to see one.
Mm.
And then I got more and more curious, because you find such interesting things in the woods, some manipulation, woodcraft, teepees, wigwams, lean-tos. They also manipulate branches. I've been observing a branch over the past few years that had been tied into a knot. You know, wind and such can tangle your fishing line into knots in some unexplainable ways. Wind knots, they're called in fly fishing. But no wind event or climate insult to a tree can produce that particular kind of result. So, and that's just one little anomalous thing that I've observed in the woods. The most blatant things are the teepees, wigwams, and such. And I've my operating thought is that it is said, or legend says, that they make these creations. How do you prove that? They're not going to come around if you're going to sit around and camp around these things, So I started dropping recorders, and the structures like this, and this structure is in a suburb of Ann Arbor. I think actually it's just near the outside border of Ann Arbor. The Huron River runs through there, and along the shoreline of the Huron River, you'll find structures similar to these. So when I find these, I study them. I look for unique things about it, and I found this on August 10th, 2022, and I got some amazing recordings. 2 female subjects.
That sounds way better. Right when you start talking about this, the only other time I've had weird audio like this happen before is when some guy was talking about, I think it was giant related stuff.
Really?
And it just like totally wigged out on us. And I was like, oh.
That's okay. So, this creeps me out a little bit, because this whole giants phenomenon, I've studied, I'm studying a lot of the teachings of Dr. Michael Heiser, and he looks at
sure,
Psalm 82 and the supernatural worldview
absolutely
of the Second Temple Jewish crowd that understood the Old Testament, that kind of thing. So not only do I believe there are people, I believe there may be some biblical parallels to this. So that, and this extra dimensional world that people talk about, I have no evidence of that, but I'm not going to discount that at all, because I just don't know. But that's weird. Some weird things happen at some very unusual, coincidental times.
Yeah, I know. I guess you say fellow podcasters that I know, the guys from Blurry Creatures, they'll have weird stuff happen when they're talking about certain. They have some pretty heavy episodes to do with giants and stuff, and they'll have some interesting tech issues happen too. So you never know what's going on out there. But we were just talking about the stick structures, and it was getting interested, and then something weird happened. But feel free to continue.
Yes. So the stick structures, this is what I look for. And I look for this one in particular is along the Huron River, not too far from Ann Arbor. And I find these anomalous structures. They're clearly not made by any insults to trees. A lot of what you see on Facebook and the interweb these days, people finding structures, I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, yeah, maybe not. But if you really have to put too much thought into it, I'm saying move on, trying to figure out what these are. But these structures are clearly made, and I study them, and they have a lot of similarities, those structures that I find. So I find those that are unique and that compel me to drop a recorder, and I drop a recorder at this one last year, 2022, on August 10th, which happened to be my birthday. And I picked up some really amazing audio clips. I think I sent them both to you. It sounds like 2 different female subjects. And in both clips, they're on the same footage, but about 9 minutes apart from one another. But in both clips, you hear others in the background, other subjects. One female subject says, "Honey awa, I was shigi wanawa," and another one 9 minutes either before or after that one, I don't recall. But on the same footage, one says, "Honey hop huskins, close to the east and to the ospa." And that expression is immediately followed by a melodic clicking and clucking, which many eyewitnesses to these beings report hearing. So that's how I'm convinced that those subjects are absolutely Sasquatch. Well, I was out, I had my little, I made a little logo and I made some stickers like this. And I'm pretty flippant about this subject, especially when it comes to strangers, because I like the shock value. And there was a couple going into this wallow, and it's a series of paths and such. The public are through here. Both of these, you can see it's right off a path. Both these structures I got audio from, but I ran into a couple, and they had this big scope, a spotting scope, and I said, "You looking for birds or Bigfoot?" And just flippantly, and she said, "You mean the ancient people?" Which told me immediately she probably knows exactly there, and they're probably going there to study them. They're in there, and I've never seen them. But I've collected plenty of audio, and the structures here, they change all the time. So I don't know if I believe these people are regionally nomadic, and they may build these along the way for whatever reasons. I simply know that by my recording experience that when I see these, they're likely to have been there, and they're likely to return, and I hope to capture them when they do return. And on audio. It's a very simple method.
When someone
sure.
asks you what do you believe or what do you feel Bigfoot is, how do you answer them?
I believe they're extant remnant populations of the giants of the Old Testament. I believe the Old Testament refers to 17 or 18 different tribes of giants, and they all have names. I'm not expert at their names, but I know like the Zamzumim are said to have been giants. The Ammonites, Fritz Zimmerman, who's done some work in the giants arena, I think he believes they're Ammonites. I personally don't know. There are references in Psalm 82 to the sons of God who are mortal. I have recordings of these creations in northern lower Michigan actually chanting. And it sounds beautiful, Jeremiah. I'm telling you, they are chanting. And I've heard it in other options, but the one that I have published on Michigan Aboriginal Project, which is the YouTube connection, you can hear them chanting. And I play it something like 10 times. It takes a moment for your ears to acclimate to the audio, but you can hear them chanting, and it's really quite beautiful. In one of my first recordings, I got this October 23rd, 2019. It was 2 nights after a massive encounter that I had, very vocal encounter, but not visual. I didn't see a thing, but it was very vocal, and there was some moments when I thought I was going to die, because it was unlike anything I'd ever experienced in the woods. It was wild and pretty scary. But so the recording I got 2 nights after that encounter, I have some recordings of some vocals. One says I had an ascension, and another voice, a different vocal signature, sounds like, just moments after this, sounds like kumbaya. Weird stuff. And I don't know if that's what they're saying. I don't, but the audio sounds exactly like that. And it's kind of, it's kind of bizarre.
Wow. So when you're talking about, related to the giants of, I would say, you could say like the Old Testament, correct? Like biblical scriptures, things like that. So you're referring to like the Nephilim then, or?
Not necessarily. Nephilim are, I believe, they're most generally considered the unholy offspring of the sons of gods and the daughters of men. That's Gen 6, 1 through 4. But there are other races of giants that, well, there are other races of giants. We know there are races of giants. I think the Nephilim are special in that they're the unholy offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men. But that begs the question, who are the sons of God? Psalm 82 suggests they're demigods. They are other gods. They are lesser gods than the one most high. And they're referred to as Ben Elohim. And they're said to be the sons of God. I don't know, but they're also said to be mortal. You know, they are mortal like man, and so it gets my creative brain wondering who and what exactly are the sons of God, who are the Nephilim. I think the Nephilim, as Scripture says, they were there in those days and thereafter. You've heard of the giant of Kandahar, I'm sure. I think that may be a modern day Nephilim, more a giant figure with more human characteristics, more likely to be men of renown. There's some debate as to whether or not Noah was a giant. I was listening to Dr. Michael Heiser today, and there's some debate about whether or not that's the truth or not. I don't know. It's a mystery, and I'm, Cliff Note version, side note here, I'm formerly atheist. I've done a 180 in that. So I know what it's like to rationalize God out of my life. But I also know what it's like to experience supernatural things that you just can't explain, other than the fact that there is some sort of supernatural order out there. And there is an order. There is an echelon. There are other planes of existence. Like the encounter night, October 21st, 2019. I'm certain I sent you that audio. That one starts with what I call cluck signaling. You hear two different subjects clucking. One's like cluck cluck in the distance, and you can hear something closer to the recorder does another cluck cluck, and then there's a voice that says something like Alberta gunfire. It's not gunfire. Sounds like gunfire. It's like Alberta gunfire. In my mind, that's like, how about the gunfires? I see another subject saying, what you're about to do might, cause some trouble. What's going to go on? Anyway, they carried on. Then I heard this chi-chi-chu ha down by the river. Then upstream, I heard this big boom, and I felt the percussive impact of that boom. It sounded like an empty dumpster being dropped a few feet off a concrete platform, and it just boom. I've heard others have similar experiences as they relate it. And I recorded that sound on one other time. It was a Hanzo file I sent you. Right at the beginning of that, you have a big boom. And that's exactly what I heard and felt on October 21st, 2019.
I think I found an October 2019 one here.
Okay. This is Kapika Swa. This is the 4 minutes of audio that I got 2 nights after the encounter. And this 4 minutes, nearly 4 minutes, it's like 3 minutes, 57 seconds. This helped me decipher what I was listening to in the encounter audio that I had recorded 2 nights before this. I heard there was a lot of clicking and clucking. It was melodic, and I really didn't know what to make of it until this clip, where I have a few examples of that conventional speech, like the kapikaswa. You hear that watery sound in the background?
Yeah.
I still don't fully understand that, but my thinking is it's a form of language. I know it sounds weird, but I think it's a form of language of others in the near vicinity of that recording.
So what kind of area were you recording this in?
This was along a river in a valley, and there was a teepee structure. It's a big teepee structure, And it was the first night I ever recorded here. And the quality recordings, this is the best quality recording that I ever gotten from there. I've gotten some other stuff. That's not true. There's another 52-second clip I sent you, which captured subjects in the foreground, which I'm accustomed to getting. And these are foreground recordings or audio captures from the same TP. But this is 3 years later. It was last October 22nd, the night of, and I got subjects close to the recorder and subjects throughout the valley. And the recorder was kicked off by a knock, what we understand as knocks. I believe they're vocals. Pretty darn sure of it. Nearly 100%. So it starts out like you hear the last half of the knock and some silence, then a little snip, and which is one tell. It's a tell that you can hear pick up other vocals. When you hear a little snip and it's very subtle, believe it or not, there are vocals there that are even more subtler than the snip. But anyway, it carries on. There's a call and then a response to the call. So you have multiple subjects throughout the valley and subjects near the recorder, and they're all communicating.
Wow.
And it's not madness. It's not chaos. I mentioned earlier that I thought that they may be some some ape, that's not yet discovered. I used to be of that mindset that it was just, I think the, North American Wood Ape Association was spot on.
What kind of recorder were you using? Do you know the specific type of recorder or just curious?
Yeah. I wonder if I have them here. They're here somewhere. I think they're Olympus products.
Okay, cool.
I also have a Zoom. I have a Zoom here.
Okay, yep.
That I use in camp because the battery life on this is not as long as the handheld. Okay, so this is the Kapikaswa. It was captured on this recorder. This is a $30 Olympus recorder. It's the VN 7200. It does not have a computer interface, so getting audio off this is a pain in the ass. So I don't recommend. But it has the VCVA option, so that's how I picked up that nearly 4 minutes of audio. Included in that audio is that Kapikaswa. You have other expressions like FFFim, Mesefetif. I mean, that these are expressions that come from a creation that has to have lips, and an ability to articulate. And the neat thing about it is I have a lot of those conventional expressions compared with the melodic clicking and clucking. So, which is an extension of their language or a separate language. I have no idea. I'm not always there when the audio is captured. From my encounter audio, and that 2 nights before that, I've published 10 minutes of that audio. In reality, that evening, I only heard maybe 20, 30 seconds of it. But there's 10 minutes of audio that, 5 minutes before and 5 after that you can hear them in the background. And, you really, for the most part, you don't hear them at all. And I never saw a thing that night. But I got plenty of audio.
Let's hear some more here. Let's see what else we've got here.
When you listen to this in between space, there are also some whispery voices in the distance, but this is cool right now. At the end of that, you hear it dump da lump da hoo, which is awesome. And this is the raw audio from that. This was captured on January 6, 2019, just a few weeks after I started getting into recording. This particular night, I could do a documentary on this night alone, with this footage alone. I think it's just 8 hours. But it starts out with snoring, a juvenile snoring. You hear its mother coughing nearby 3 times in a short spans of time. Coughs twice within 19 seconds. in that 19 seconds, the subject sounds absolutely human when they cough, when she coughed. Yeah. So this is just one capture that night. I got snoring, I got the coughing, I got this kind of stuff. I also have some really weird stuff with vocal expressions unlike anything that I've captured in northern Michigan. So if these are Sasquatch and those that I'm recording up north are Sasquatch, I'm wondering if they have regional dialects. But because the modalities, the sort of, I call it a sort of a harmonic resonant vocal modality. I hear that both in southern and in northern Michigan and even in the UP. But there are variations. And I don't know if they're slightly different cryptids, wildly different cryptids.
Sure.
But this kind of stuff is typical Sasquatch. And I got a lot of that typical Sasquatch. Same with the weird stuff that night, January 6th.
So very interesting.
It's weird, but this is, yeah. So you hear subjects in the background, that one, in the foreground, with the whistle, that sweet hot whistle. I've recorded that actually, that sweet hot. I've recorded that in lower Michigan. Very similar expression. And I think I call it the sweet hot expression. It's a recording I captured some years ago, just a few years ago, because I haven't been recording more than 4.5 years about. But when you find those structures, you can drop a recorder and you can consistently get these kind of strange vocals.
When you're getting recordings like this, how far out into the woods are you? Are you in a like woods near a town, or is it pretty remote? Or,
well, for example, the Huron River expressions that I got, it was the recording the recording that just you aired right before this one. That's within the city limits of Ann Arbor.
Okay.
You can go along. There are many parks along the Huron River around Ann Arbor. I've only been to a couple of them, and you can find structures in there. And that's what I do. When I've located an anomalous structure, clearly manipulated, made by, you'd think it may have been made by local kids. The only way to find out if it was or not is to drop a recorder, and that's what I've been doing.
I see. Okay, so your main evidence for differentiating between Sasquatch structure versus like a bushcraft structure is what you capture through audio.
Yeah, pretty much.
I got it. Yeah, that's really, really interesting.
It's a good verification.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. Sometimes I listen to some old stuff. Actually, I started recording, I think it was December 9th, 2018. Anyway, I recently went back and revisited some of those old recordings, which I hadn't really scored before because I thought nothing was on them. But when I've done this a few years now, so I've really kind of picked up on these very subtle signs, like the snip that is often accompanied with other vocalizations. When you peel away the white noise, the general din of the environment, peel away the white noise and amplify it a little bit in minute steps. You take baby little steps. I don't always go with the default range of correction like a denoise or anything like that. I do little steps of that and repeated little steps, and it's amazing what comes out in terms of sheer vocals. I mean, these are expressions. It is speech, and sometimes they sound like beasts, demons. Other times they sound like effeminate, harmless things, or little sprites, little fairies. I've picked up all sorts of types of vocal expressions. which confuses things. Do the Sasquatch speak in all these different ways? Or do they travel in bands of, of other dimensional creations? I have no idea. But the audio that I picked up, especially the 10-minute audio, most of which I did not hear at the time, it begs a lot of questions, because you listen to that 10 minutes, you'll hear things that sound demonic, beastly, angelic, sprightly, you sound gremlinish, weird.
Wow.
Weird, really, really weird stuff. And it makes you wonder, are these disembodied spirits, as Michael Heiser has said, those that are condemned to the dark, to the night, to the underworld, I don't know. But I tell you, Jeremiah, when I got home after that encounter I had it was the 21st, it was a Monday night, 21st October 2019, I was pretty messed up, and I you can't talk to your family or friends, and I couldn't talk to my wife about it, and you have to kind of eat it up. And about a month later, I actually got the nerve up to listen to the audio. I didn't think it was going to be good audio because it was raining that night. The recorder was under the tarp, and so I kind of held on to it. My wife is just getting home right now, so if you hear any noise in the background. So anyway, for a month I was getting over a case of my nerves, right? Hey, sweetheart. And I listened to it and cleaned up the audio, and then I kind of wish I hadn't, because I was messed up for a few more months after that, because it was.
Let's head on to the next one here and see what we got.
The last third of this, you hear a little sprightly voice. Sounds like, keep coming. And prior to that, of course, you hear that melodic clicky clucky stuff. So this is a way they speak. And I don't know if these are two different subjects, because the keep it coming and the sprightly voice at the end, it looks to be a different subject, because the intensity of color isn't there. So if you can imagine a 3D setting, the brighter vocalizations or prints here on the sonogram are brighter. I imagine they're closer to the recorder. But these, what day was this? I think this is one of my most recent recordings. I can't tell. It's a little blurry on the file.
Right.
I can hardly read it, but so there's an example of two different subjects. One speaking in a very furtive, sprightly way, and they communicate with that melodic clicking and clucking. I've got a ton of that stuff.
Wow. And was this also in a stick structure that you captured?
Yes.
This one?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, this was the very same stick structure some years later, after the same structure as I got the Kapika Swan and other vocalizations. Now, this stuff is not always to hear. When I'm reviewing audio, you need to really fine tune and actively listen to the subtle stuff. Like I said earlier, you can have a subtle snip, and that's an indication to me that there may be something anomalous there. So I just cut the clip, save it later, and I address it. Then I'll go back and clarify it, reduce the noise, go through a process, and see what I get. And very often you get this weird, very esoteric, form of communication. We will never understand. I don't believe. About to hear one say Hanzo. Now it gets really weird here, Jeremiah. Listen to this buzzing humming. You see on the spectrograph above there, there's this huge amplification. and there's also an intensifying yellow at the base, and this is what I believe to be an infrasonic vocal expression. The intensifying yellow at the bottom of each of the spectrogram corresponds with that amplification in the spectrograph. So it's not, yeah. So it really picks up on the spectrograph. You know something's there, but you really kind of have to, if you're not paying attention, you're not going to hear it. But it's represented by that intense yellowing down there. And I believe this is infrasonic origins of speech. And it is a buzzing, and like I said, I call it a harmonic resonant, but it's also a buzzing and humming. And back to our earlier discussion on the Old Testament, there are people in Deuteronomy 2nd chapter verse 20 referred to as the Zamzumim. They only get one mention in the Bible. Zamzumim got their name from the word zimzum. It's an ancient Hebrew word that means to buzz or to hum. So this is that buzzing, humming vocal modality, which perhaps the Zamzumim giants people, perhaps that's how they got their name. I don't know. It's speculation, but it seems to pair well between my investigation into this subject and my biblical studies.
It's fascinating. This audio clip, I was like, I can't even begin to imagine what's going on in here. And was this also in a stick structure as well?
This was recorded in a place, and you can see I have a publication on the Michigan Aboriginal Project on YouTube. It's called Vocal Village 2 Recorder Placements. And you can see the actual village, if you will, that I was in. It was the singular highest concentration of stick structures that I've ever come across in the woods. And I found it not by my own, any of my own doing, other than following a hunch. But I met a waitress who said she saw one. She saw one of these huge. She said it was huge. Told me where it was, just outside of town. And this is not far outside of Marquette, Michigan. And so I went there, and I started finding the structural artifacts and the highest concentration of structural artifacts. They're all teepees, wigwams, lean-tos, and variations of all of that. So I chose 2 structures. This was the first structure I chose to bug. And this happened sometime during the night. Then the other structure I bugged came off, and I know that they had visited where I was just standing right after I left, because the other recorder was engaged to begin on VCVA mode at 8 o'clock, and that was about 40 minutes after I left the area. So the recording on the other one, and I'm sure I know I sent you that clip, but it's bizarre.
Before we leave this one, does it almost sound like something's being thrown around, or do you take that as like that's the voice the whole time?
I think it's all vocals. I think all of that. There's that boom that I experienced in an encounter. I didn't experience it on this one because I wasn't present when this was recorded. When I first heard this, it sounded like, and this is like in the middle of the night, it sounded like heavy construction equipment in a distance. Now I cleaned it up and amplified it a little bit. But yeah, that's clearly, these are vocals. How'd you like to hear that outside your tent? There's the weird stuff, that heavy buzz.
And that heavy buzz really gets you too.
Yeah, well, I've heard that orbs, I heard one witness of orbs say that it did buzz like that. Most people see orbs say they don't make a sound at all. But I don't know what it is. It sounds like you would imagine a spaceship might sound, right? I don't know.
It's weird, man. I don't have any answers for this one.
I know. It's like, are you kidding me? I never thought any of this was possible. But they give themselves away by making these structures. And all you have to do is find them, and that's fun. If you have some sort of spirit of adventure, it gets you out, and gets you out, gets you busy, keeps you. It makes me feel like a little kid in the woods. Oh, that's the snip. Here's a call, and Here's a response to the call coming up. Yes, this is that scenario, the 52-second clip that I got with subjects both near and afar from
Right.
the recording. But that was amazing. I've heard elements of this recorded by other people here and there, but all of this together, you got a whistle, you got the snip, you got actual conventional speech, you have a call, you have a siren sound like the woo. Sorry, audience. Terrible.
Not the worst thing they've ever heard. Don't worry.
I'm terrible with that stuff, but yeah, this is a scenario where you have multiple subjects throughout the valley, and it's not chaos. It's not like this Gigantopithecus blackie who was portrayed as being a slow, dumb, reclusive ape in the woods. This is like a freaking assembly, and they're all communicating, and they're not talking over one another.
Wait a second. Yeah. Do you know this? So something just went off in my head. Do you know what comes out a lot recently in different interviews is recordings of almost creatures singing?
I'd like to hear those.
Have you ever experienced that?
I've heard them sing, quite honestly.
Oh, you have?
I have.
And it's weird. It almost sounds like some old hymn type. It's very weird.
Well, you want to hear something weird? Chanting. I have them chanting from the same teepee that this audio was captured. I have other audio that's chanting, and it's the audience can look down my video feed, and it says chanting, and I question sacred space. So they're chanting. I have that, and I have other saying I had an ascension. Yeah, and I have others that sound absolutely demonic. You have to wonder what the hell they are. I don't know, and I'm looking for answers. I'll never proclaim to know the true reality of this, because I don't think it's up for us to know. But I'm curious enough to keep trying, and it's really fun. I call it mining vocal gems from the depths of the woods, right? Because you never know what you're going to get. You never know what you're going to get.
I apologize for cutting in like that, but I was like, it came out of nowhere. I was like, man, that kind of lines up directly with what he's been talking about. Just talking about the giant / not as much ape creature view of things. I think you've got one of a video of an actual recorder here.
Yeah, that was this one, and this is in the same wallow as the recording that you played right before the Hanzo file. This happened right after I left, so eyes were on me, and I know this because I've reviewed the audio and I've picked up some things more of the esoteric nature that are easily missed. But they were there; their eyes were on me, and as soon as I left, they came. They came, and they were checking out what I left. I suppose that's how I got that recording. This is the same wallow that the waitress told me about.
And you said around Marquette?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to listen to that one more time.
So yeah, conventional
Yeah,
speech in
I
there.
don't like
Yeah,
that. Yeah, I
yeah.
don't like that, James.
I call it a pissed off Sasquatch.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't like it either. It sounds malicious.
it does. Yeah, that's not a good vocal sound. I mean, it's an excellent recording, but the subject is not having a good day.
Yeah, no, not at all.
For sure.
This is the closest. Now everybody's familiar with the Sierra sounds. This audio clip is the closest thing I have that is similar to Ron Moorhead's recordings.
Interesting, yeah.
Most everything else I got is really very different. So, I don't believe they're all alike. Mike Patterson has some audio. I'm not one to say that that's legit or not. I've always thought that, I don't have any reason to doubt Mike Patterson, but it's very different. And his stuff is very different from Ron Moorhead's, and my stuff is very different from either one of theirs. So, maybe Mike Patterson did record a Sasquatch. I have no idea.
Yeah, that's a whole different episode.
Yeah,
the whole Mike
Patterson
stuff, for sure.
But it's different part of the country, different part of the world. So I don't think anybody can say that, they're all alike. We can't come to that conclusion. We can't say that they're all Nephilim. We can't say that they're all, sons of God, if they still exist. And I'm of the mindset, formerly atheist and such,
Sure.
that I have yet to find any misleading information of the Bible, which is, another mind-blowing thing to accept. So I don't know. This reality it's real, right? So I hope to inspire younger. My demographic is all 100% male between 55 and 64. Same for
right.
present
It's same for
company,
me.
right?
Weird.
It's like,
yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah, how do you reach younger kids? I want to inspire young men to get out of their homes, get out of their parents' basement, get off the game consoles, go out and be the man that you were intended to be. And you can do it with this. I mean, this God thing I found is real. This Bigfoot thing I found is quite real. And it's an amazing combination. And I do believe we are all of the same creation. We're all made of this same hidden stuff. And there's so much more to learn about the very realities of this world. The mysteries they abound.
But there are absolute mysteries out there, which is one of the main reasons that I do this podcast, to help people share the mysteries that they've experienced and they're investigating. Saving the video. There's a video you sent, and I'm very curious about this. But do you just want to play it and then share what happened, or do you need to say anything before we play it? Or
well, I think it's a 51-second clip that looks mainly black and white, although it's in color. It was shot in color.
Yeah.
It looks black and white because it was at night and I had my light on. So this happened. This is October 30th, 2016. It was my second trip since I started looking into the subject, actually entering the field, which was mid-September. So this is like 5-6 weeks later. I think it was my 7th night in the woods since I entered the field, trying to find one. And I actually captured one. I had an encounter and captured either it or a subject with this one on video. So I went to the side of the camp and I was brushing my teeth. I went to spit toothpaste out. I had my red headlamp on and I look up and I'm looking at these big eyes. And this is about probably 60, 80 feet away. And I'm thinking, okay, what's going on here? What is it? And I'm observing. It never moved a millimeter, not a single millimeter. And we just stared at each other for the longest time. And it was within that time that I determined that it was, in fact, I was having a Sasquatch encounter. I mean, these eyes were huge and they were very wide set and they never moved. And the color was like the very pale greenish, yellowish hue to them. And it's very peaceful. It's just a very benign, peaceful, but we just sat and stared for the longest time. Ultimately, it closed its right eye. So the one on the left, by my perspective, it just closed it. It just disappeared. It was extinguished. And the other eye remained there. And I think that it was perhaps getting a little oversensitized to or becoming sensitive to my light. The reason why it closed that one eye. So we looked at it was another minute or two. And I decided to, as nonchalantly as possible, walk back into the camp. I grabbed my flashlight, I grabbed my video camera, and I captured one in the background. So it's important for the audience to know that the subject is in the background. And when I do the scrubbing of it, it is magnified, but it shows enough detail that you can see the ocular recess, you can see the auricular recess, you see the shape of the hominin body. It's an upright, you see it pivot. The natural movement is pivoting from the right to the left, and it's just trying to get out of the light of my flashlight. So that's the natural action of that subject in the background. But I show you the original clip and the scrub version. So go for it. All right,
let's take a look.
Nice. So from right to left, when it pivots left, you see the ocular recess, auricular recess, shape of the body, the large trapezius muscles on the upper back, clearly. And Jeremiah, you hear a subtle cooing at the 4-second mark of the raw audio, which is a Sasquatch vocal. So I don't believe the subject was alone. I'm not sure if this is the one I was staring down prior. Because the one I was staring down prior was actually to the left of that, but they could have moved when I was grabbing my gear.
I want to play it one more time.
There it was back in the background. And there it's not.
Man, it is so hard to see in the actual video.
It really is.
It's really quick.
Yeah. And it wasn't until February the following year. So it was over 4 months that video, because I didn't see anything when I grabbed the camera and the flashlight. I didn't know I can't capture this. I didn't think I saw anything. And I was convinced. And the reason why I was staring at this thing so long was because I knew if I broke eye contact, I'd never see it again. So I didn't think I got anything that night. And then that caught my eye. And when I was getting a little cabin fever here in February. And that's what came of it. Not the best evidence, but listen, it's enough to show the shape of the body. It is cool because you can see the shape of the body and movement. It's got movement.
After you found that in the video, did you go back to that location and try to figure out like how tall the creature was?
I did, yeah. That kind of deal, yeah. Like 5.5, 6 feet. That's just an estimate, and a guess. I don't know. It was the next trip when I did that, so it had to have been the following spring when I was trying to recreate that. So. But that's right outside my traditional campground. I'm there twice a year, most every year. And
so is that also Marquette area or?
No, this is the northern Lower Michigan.
Okay, so I'm also had a question to ask you. Have you ever looked into like the Glenny part of Michigan before?
Glenny, like I know there is a Glenny.
It's like northern Lower Michigan. I talked to a guy that had an interesting thing happen to him in Glenny once. So just a random question. But
is that Glenny? I know I've been there. I know I've seen it. Is it near Glen Arbor?
I do not know.
Anyway,
actually, yeah.
Wherever there are rivers and streams in Michigan, you have populations of these things.
That is true. It is. Let me look real quick. It's in the middle of a huge forest area. I guess that's a lot of.
You're on Manistee.
It's close to the eastern part of the northern part
Oh,
of
okay. Glennie, Michigan.
Michigan.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is perhaps the Huron National Forest.
Okay.
Glennie, I used to hunt north of Glennie in, there's Oscoda. Okay. I used to hunt in Alpena. And I've had some interesting experiences in Alpena along the Sasquatch.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I have two sightings and two other occurrences. One was a slap on the side of the cabin. We were up there hunting. There was a bunch of guys. We were being rambunctious. And then we heard this loud crack on the side. And it was totally from the side of the cabin. And one of the Tonys, it's an Italian family, a lot of Tonys in this family, as well as guests. He went out there and there was nothing on. He said it was probably a stick on the roof, but there's no stick on the roof. There's nothing there. It was a loud crack on the side. And the only thing that it just remained a mystery until I got into this subject and learned that, the house slapping was a thing, right? So,
oh yeah, it's a huge deal. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a loud, quick clap, startling actually.
Man.
Pretty crazy. But yeah, we were out there and they're probably, the Sasquatch are probably out in the woods laughing because they're pranksters. It's like the juvie that woke me up last fall. That was not very nice. It was a malicious act, but yeah, they'll mess with you. They will definitely mess with you.
So your viewpoint of that, they are a giant creature. Do you think it would be possible to communicate with them in some way?
Yes, and well, yeah. I mean, I've communicated with him directly, like the Juvie. I mean, he gave me this. He woke me up at 6 a.m. It was last October 24th, the morning of. It was a Monday morning. It was raining. 6 a.m. I was in a deep sleep, and it hissed at. It sounded like a hiss, but it was like a gurgly, gravelly vocalization, which was speech. The recorder was going, so you can and the audience can go and listen to that. It's just encounter audio, and you can hear how demonic that one actually sounds. It does sound demonic. Don't know if it is or not, but it certainly sounded that way. And to be awakened by this gurgly, gravelly hiss at 6 a.m. for really maybe one of the first times I'd gotten any decent deep sleep in 3 nights, that happened.
It's some incredible, really interesting audio, James. And I think this is a great episode because it makes people go down a lot of rabbit trails and kind of think about certain things in their minds and how they feel about them. And yeah. I think it's going to really take a lot of people on a interesting journey. There's way more of evidence you've captured on your YouTube channel, correct?
Yeah, and I don't share everything. I've got some stuff, like I said, that night of January 6th, I could do a full documentary for hours long on that and and I will eventually, but it's time. And you'll notice my MO is I'm not always out there. I don't always put myself out there, and this is why I'm grateful for this opportunity, because people can get to know me a little bit better. But on my own channel, I'm not that sensationalistic. I put out my evidence because it's fun. These are my vocal gems that I've mined from the woods, and I just want to share them. I think ultimately the greater community will catch on to these unique vocals. Whether they're unique to the region, Michigan, I don't know, because they're certainly a lot different from Ron Moorhead's. Now, Ron Moorhead, and I don't know if he actually recorded this incident, but he said through the night that it sounded as if they came into his camp and they were making all sorts of racket, and he thought the place was being torn up. They have that clacky, that in the last couple of clips you played, there are these clacky, rhythmic, clicks and whatever, and they can be really loud. They can be so loud that they sound like gunshots. Not kidding. I've recorded some of that and haven't even publish
Wow.
that. But that the gunshots, that's kind of more on speculation. I have to cross-reference some other audio, but I believe that to be true. And by witness testimony, we hear that, people have said they sound like gunshots. I mean, they're that loud. It's such an otherworldly experience that you just don't see coming. You just don't see it coming at all. And why aren't we told about this by our powers to be, by our governments, right? I personally think it is their role, because one of their primary roles is to protect us, right? They're very well of this phenomenon. I know they are. I think your audience believes it as well. I mean, if you look into the subject,
one thing's for certain, I'm sure that they know more than they are sharing. That's for sure. I almost guarantee that.
Yeah.
But we'll see if anything ever comes out. But James, this has been a very interesting episode. I'm so thankful you were able to come on and to share what you've captured so far. It's a small portion of that, and encourage people to go check out your channel, subscribe to that.
Thank you.
Watch through all the different videos you have. But are there any other things that you would like people to be aware of, ways that they can keep up to date with the project?
I've got MichiganAboriginal.com is my main hub. There are links to my YouTube channel. There's a link to a store I made. I made this little logo.
Nice.
And it has a lot. That's I've yet to break $200 in the past 14 months that store's been up, and I don't push it that hard. But if anybody cares to buy a T-shirt, it goes a long way. I'm between jobs right now, so a little gas money to go off to Ann Arbor up north would be appreciated.
Right.
And you get something really cool in exchange. But another thing, I've got a lot of audio and I put it out there. I share it freely and willingly. I encourage the audience not to play this in the woods. Do not play anything like this in the woods. I do encourage the audience, if they're interested in doing something like this, to look for those structures in likely areas, and just leave a recorder. Hide them as best you can. I'm pretty sure they're going to find the recorder, because they usually do. But please people don't. It's your own safety. We don't know what sort of response you might get, playing this in the woods. Please don't play my stuff in the woods. Keep it yourselves. Learn from it. There are a variety of vocal modalities that you can learn about and actually perhaps be in tune to the next time you're out in the woods, because at times when they're speaking, when they're around you, you don't necessarily see them, you don't hear them, but sometimes you'll hear, rarely do you hear them, sometimes you'll hear or sense a sort of like a harmonic resonance on your eardrums. Pay attention to that. When the hair on the back of your neck goes up, pay attention to that. That could be a response to their communicating around us. And they do that quite ably, adeptly, and we're none the wiser. The 10 minutes of encounter audio that I've published, it's called In Their Midst. In Their Midst. One of them's warning high strangeness, not for the faint of heart, and the other one's In Their Midst, 10 minutes uninterrupted. Each has something else to offer. They're different filtered versions of the same raw footage. But listen to both, because you'll hear things that are just unbelievable. At the 3-minute, 50-second part of that audio, you'll hear one subject. It sounds like he's in the background. It says Ebenopsy. Ooh ha ha. Really cool. But all sorts of little vocal gems in there that are fun to find. And when you're in the woods and you the hair goes up on your back, or you sense that something's really not quite right, just pay extra attention, because you might have a visitation. They're out there, and they're well aware of our presence.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. And I've been scared, pretty darn scared and terrified. But looking back, they haven't harmed me. They've scared me plenty. They'll mess with you. If anybody out there sees one, say hi. They do have an ability to communicate. And if you treat them with respect, which is a really hard thing to do, depending on the circumstances. I'm just seeing one of these things. Can leave you speechless. But thinking of all that I've been through with the past few years, it's been one of the world's greatest adventures on a beer budget that I could ever imagine. And
there you go. Is there a way that people can reach out to you, like if they've experienced things that are similar to this, and they're like, "Oh man,
sure.
I totally get it." Yeah.
Well, there's the Facebook group, which I'm hot and cold on action. It's Michigan Aboriginal Project. You can, on michiganaboriginal.com, there's a contact me section there. There's also a list of podcasts that I've been on. Yours, of course, will be on there likely tomorrow if I get off my lazy butt. My wife and I are going to go see some family in Southern Ohio, which is exciting to me because Southern Ohio is around the glacial moraines, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's where I used to play as a kid in the streams, and in those streams, in those greenways, I have found structures. I haven't recorded there yet, but there are plenty of structures around Southern Ohio that's, if any of your listening audience is down there, go to Grant Park. Not just south of Dayton, south and west of Dayton, I think. Lots of structures in there.
There'll be someone that in the comments on YouTube that's been like, I totally go there, or I went there and I saw the structures.
I would love to hear that.
As you said, it's a big audience now. And like people are super cool on YouTube, and like they're researching like stuff that people say that it's getting wild, but it's very cool.
I just don't know where to go see one. I know where to go find the Sasquatch. Where they hang out is findable. Whether or not you can see one is it's not likely you're going to see one. But I tell you, you put yourself out there and you start poking around their areas, like I have up north. They know where I camp, and that's where I get most of my action. I'll go in the daytime and I'll drop my recorders. I'll poke around their areas, but at nighttime they come to me.
James, thank you so much for hanging out. This has been
Jeremiah.
Great. I hope some interesting things come out of this episode. Again, if you've got encounters or things that this episode reminds you of, put them in the comments, please. Those that listen on YouTube. But thank you so much for coming on, James.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, audience. Peace be with you all.